Hey folks, welcome back to Jess Klein's Big Table. I'm glad you could be here today. Intense times, and I just want to acknowledge if you're feeling a lot and going through a lot, you're not alone. I'm with you. I'm really glad because my guest today is someone who has decades of experience doing racial justice work and knowing how to internally regulate herself when faced with triggers, and just a really, really brilliant woman. So here we go. A survivor of the New York City foster care system, Aminata Desert Rose Plant Walker Firewoman, also known as Dr. Amanda Kemp, has been a lifelong poet, performer, and advocate of justice. As a student at Stanford University, she was a leader in student movements to divest from South Africa and to press the university to revamp Eurocentric curriculum requirements. Since her college years, she has worked with the Reverend Jesse Jackson, the Honorable Maxine Waters, and Niyonu Spann, and won numerous community awards. As an artist, she has shared the stage and or created with Danny Glover, August Wilson, Sonia Sanchez, Toni Morrison, George Wolfe, and Amiri Baraka. In 2007, she founded Theater for Transformation to dramatize stories from African American history. With a doctorate in race and performance from Northwestern University, she taught college students at Cornell University, Dickinson College, and Franklin and Marshall College. Now a visiting scholar at Franklin and Marshall, Dr. Kemp is also the best-selling author of Stop Being Afraid, 5 Steps to Transform Your Conversations About Racism, and Say the Wrong Thing, a collection of personal essays about racial justice and compassion. Aminata's wisdom and I find speaking to her both grounding and expansive, and it made me feel much more empowered than I had been feeling. So without further ado, please welcome Aminata Desert Rose Plant Walker Firewoman. Aminata, thank you so much for being here today.
You are so welcome, Jess Klein, with your big ass table.
Yeah. What you can't see, she's just outside the frame, is my cat. I think she was drawn to your energy or something because she's right here on the table.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. How are you? How is your heart today?
How is well, pretty good. I think pretty good. You know, my beloved has gone for the weekend, so I feel sad but happy for him. And it's 1 week, maybe 10 days since Donald Trump's re-election. And I think I am settling into my body and settling into some curiosity.
Yeah.
About what this all means and what comes next. So yeah, so that's how I am.
Yeah. Thank you. I wanted to ask you about, I wanted to ask you to expand on something you had said in a video that you released a couple days ago. You were talking about embracing the duality of this time post-election and embracing that we live in a multiplicity and to not get entranced by binary thinking, good versus bad, red versus blue. And I'm guessing a lot of my listeners want so much to be able to embrace the duality and not get stuck in the polarity. And I personally find myself going back and forth between being able to do that and then getting stuck in the fear, and
yes.
I'm wondering if you could share with us, how do you embrace the duality? What are some practices we can use to make room for something more nuanced to emerge when we might be feeling like our trust in others is broken?
So I make a distinction between duality and polarity. So that's the first thing. So duality is either or. us versus them, black versus white. And the polarity is inhale and exhale, black and white, night and day. And when you hold a polarity, you're not saying that everything is the same, but what you're looking for is you have some openness as to what is in the upside of the part of the polarity that you are least comfortable with. So it allows for you to see variation in one pole. For example, if I look at red and blue in this country, the United States of America, I have voted as a Democrat my entire adult life, but I'm probably going to become an independent. I'm probably going to register independent, very soon. Why? Because what is blue represents a variety of interests, some of which are mine, but many, 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 maybe most, are not mine. Mm-hmm. And when I look at the other poll that we're presented with, the red poll, the Republican poll, many, 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 many things I do not feel represented.
Yeah.
And the red poll that I am sympathetic to is freedom of speech. Yeah. I am curious about the way freedom of speech has been shut down. Not just with COVID, because it's been shut down inside or against black, let's call them revolutionary, not even that revolutionary really, but, black, whatever, kind of anti-status quo forces.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, anyway, so I'm kind of interested in how is this freedom of speech thing being used and who's using it? So the other thing about this polarity, holding it as a polarity and holding multiplicity within each side, variation, because if you look at something like night and day, you say it's night or it's day. Okay, maybe. But then what is 3 o'clock? Well, it's day. Okay, what about 4:30? Well, it depends on where you are. It's kind of getting towards the night. So there's gradation within each side. And the problem is when we get entranced into the other side is all one thing, or we are all one thing, then there's a basis for violence. Then there's a basis for, well, if you, Amanda, don't, and you're supposed to be on my side, and you don't agree with me on all of this, then you're the enemy. You know what I mean? Yeah. We can't allow for there to be difference without making it an enemy situation. And that, I think, is really dangerous.
Yeah.
It doesn't make us feel safe in our bodies.
That's right.
Then we're just, because we're like, I live in a purple state. I live on a purple block.
Yeah.
And I don't want to run a narrative in my head. These people out here are out to get me. They're gonna try to kill me. These people out here are trying to kill my kids. These people out here are trying to, I don't want to run that story. I don't know why these people on this block voted Republican.
Yeah.
For sure, I don't know.
You don't know, right?
So I hold this with some uncertainty, with some not knowingness.
Yeah. It's so interesting. As you were talking, I felt so much more at peace just with that possibility of nuance, of this isn't all one thing or all another thing. And I don't know. I've been thinking about this so much too. Like, what have I bought into that I was told this is, I don't know, like, it wasn't, I don't know, sometimes this happens and I get a lot of thoughts at one time, but I'll try and pick one and articulate it. But it's like, what have I been told is the right way for me to think as someone who's somewhere on the left? Like, what have I been told about the people who are supposedly opposing me? What did I buy into here that helped create this dichotomy or these bubbles where we can't even talk to each other? You know, like what part did I play in creating such a polarized country, you know? But so I'm really grateful to hear you talk about that, because it feels like it does open up possibility where, yeah, the other thing is like, I just think of when you're in fear, like everything shrinks, like your body, everything in your brain, and you're just like,
oh, that is such an important point, Jess. When you're in fear, everything shrinks. And your brain, you literally are not in a space, you're not in your prefrontal cortex, you're in your hind brain. And when you're in survival, you breathe differently. I mean, your cortisol levels are up. You know, I just heard the other day, my husband was telling me, my husband who's white, whose daughter is white, was telling him, this is how everyone gets our information these days, right?
Yeah.
In her psychology class, they were saying how they had done research and found that Black women, we have higher levels of cortisol, and they get passed along generationally. And that, of course, makes sense when you think of what Black women have endured and how much fear we've had to manage and impossible situations to deal with. And yet, I am in 2024. I am not in the same situation that Harriet Tubman was in.
Yeah.
You know, there's nowhere near the situation she was in. So if I cannot, but if my baseline cortisol, is in this heightened state, then it doesn't give me as much breathing room. Or my daughter, who of course I love, her breathing room to reconsider, to be more. So I do think that we have responsibility to take care of ourselves, to bring down our cortisol levels, and not to feed each other back and forth. Or like you said, you mentioned how are you contributing? Like, what are you consuming that's raising your cortisol?
Yeah, I've been in a heavy review of what I am consuming, digitally or otherwise. I really appreciate you saying that, because it's in, for all the ways that this could be seen as a scary time, it's also a great time to reconsider, up to what are we giving our time and attention? Because if you follow that belief that what you give your attention to grows, then,
I think about that too. I think about that too. What you give your attention to grows. I think about that. What's important is not saying it's only that. So what you give your attention to grows. So therefore you cannot look at what is horrific. You know what I mean? This is why I'm saying polarity thinking is, and the other thing is, I was talking to someone else this morning on my own podcast, and we were talking about the capacity to hold, to sit with something that is uncomfortable, horrific, something like genocide, something like, just traumatic stuff. And to be able to hold it, you actually have to build capacity. And you build capacity over time. You build capacity with your own capacity to be in your breath, to watch your thoughts, to not get physically overwhelmed or emotionally overwhelmed. But your capacity to do that might be different from my capacity. And depending on what the issue is, I might have a greater capacity for something than you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, this is why I feel like this is so important to not presume you know what other people are thinking, that you know what their capacity or what their story is, or to even hold yourself to a standard that you cannot hold. You know what I'm saying? Everybody, this is something I've been saying lately is like, my yoga teacher, I have a Black Baptist minister who's my yoga teacher.
Wow.
I know, what a crazy man.
Cool.
I love him.
Yeah.
Literally, I love that
Amazing.
man. He's so wild. He is a wild person. He calls himself untethered. He said the other day, he said, stay on your mat. Stay on your mat. Wow. Stay on your mat. And he always says these things that he wants us to reverberate with, outside of our little classes with him.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm like, stay on my mat. What is my capacity? And I have a desire to contribute to the collective, to our collective liberation. So that means I have a responsibility or a path of expanding my capacity beyond my own personal healing, to the healing of my lineage, to humanity and planetary healing. But that is a process.
Yeah.
And for some people, they need to stay really with their own healing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like the years that you've spent doing some of the work you've been doing through Racial Justice from the Heart and Mother Tree Community, which I'm hoping you'll talk more about, has that expanded your capacity in that? Has that expanded you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've been explicitly doing racial justice work since I was 16 and I'm 58. Wow. So that's 42 years. Wow. And what I'll say in that is when I started, it was very externally focused, very much in the realm of protest.
Yeah.
And then it was more in the realm of electoral politics. I worked for Jesse Jackson. I interned with Maxine Waters in LA. And then I got more into an academic thing, which is why I have a PhD. But it was when I turned inward to start to deal with some of my internal healing, made some space for that I started to see how my childhood wounds were playing out in my social justice work.
Wow.
And when you can see it in yourself, when you can see it you might see it in someone else first before you can see it in yourself, but you'll see it. People's wounds are all over in social justice work. And the problem with that is that we're just playing out dramas. So we're actually not advancing. We may make advances, improvements, but we can't get out of this paradigm.
Yeah. Yeah. God, I just like all the hairs on my neck are like, this is amazing. Because movements are made up of people, and people have their own shit going on.
and we have lineages.
Yes. Yeah.
We have lineages. And if you look at Black people, we have, in the United States, we have a lineage of slavery. We have other lineages too. We have Native lineages. We have a lot of Irish lineage, but a lot of those lineages have a lot of trauma in them.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So there's the healing of ourselves and there's the healing of our lineages. And for me, it was important to go beyond the psychological or the psychology paradigm to more of a healing paradigm and to a lineage, to seeing lineage. Yeah. And the big shift for me came in 2021 when, I got burnt out. I had a bit of a breakdown a lot of tears because I felt like I couldn't stop. It was about a year, not even a year after George Floyd had been killed. My racial justice from the heart business had really exploded. It was just so many people wanted this racial justice from the heart work, the curriculum. And I was in a coaching session with someone to figure out how to scale up. Even though I was so tired, I was like, oh, how do I scale up? How do I get bigger?
Yeah.
And, I broke down in that session. And what just came out of my mouth was like I was just tapping into something deep in me, my true self. And my true self said, Amanda needs to stop everything. The trees want to adopt her. Shocking. Wow. I was literally, I'm telling you, I was like, the trees want to adopt me. I mean, I like my trees, but whatever. I mean, what the hell? Where did this come from?
Yeah.
So,
Weird. Yeah.
So I just want to say that started to attune me to thinking multidimensionally, not just in the human dimension, but in the plant dimension. And then when I was thinking the human dimension before, I was just thinking about people who were alive, but thinking multidimensionally, and then I'm thinking about ancestrally.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, the world is not this line that I thought it was, cause and effect. You're forward or you're backwards. It is so multiple.
So much more than we are taught to notice.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think made space in you to hear the message about the trees wanting to adopt you?
I had an emergency root pain. I'd had emergency root canal. I was resentful at people who I felt weren't doing enough, which really meant I was doing too much, but it kept being expressed as, why aren't people doing more? Why aren't they stepping up? So being resentful at other people, having an emergency root canal because I felt I was too busy to go to the dentist to deal with it before it got to that point. And I was getting these little, my son was just dropping these disruptive comments on me. He was tapping in at a deeper level. And I was like, I was like he said to me once, he said to me, Mommy, what did he say? Something like, Mommy, you can't let reality dictate you can't let reality dictate your thoughts or something like that.
Wow.
And I was like, what the hell?
How
reality.
old is your son?
I know. And I was like, he was trying to tell me, you're just so like smushed up against it. You have no perspective. And the reality that you see is so narrow.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was popping some stuff in there, and I was, so I was willing to listen. My child, my adult son.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was a young black male. And I was very activated with wanting to protect him.
Yeah.
And so when he was telling me, you got to shift it up, the way you were coming at this, it's like you're in chains.
Yeah.
I was willing to listen to him.
Wow. That's really powerful. I'm glad that he had that perspective to share.
Yes. And he became a teacher in my racial justice from the heart community. I was like, okay, well, you want to lead a meditation series?
Amazing. Oh my goodness.
And I would be going to those. I would go to his classes, his meditation series, and I'd be like, mute, put myself off camera. And I was like, wow, he just guided us into some places. He guided us into a level of consciousness where I couldn't even articulate the kind of thoughts I had before we started the meditation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, this is so cool. Okay. I don't want to cut you off if you had more to say.
I just want to also say plant medicine.
Yeah, yeah. Talk to us about how you became more connected to plant medicine, and is that also part of Mother Tree community? And
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think plant medicine, when I say plant medicine, I mean very broadly speaking. I don't just limit it to psychedelic or entheogenic plants like ayahuasca or psilocybin. I mean plant medicine, including those, but I also mean plant medicine like the rose. That's been a very powerful teacher and protector for me. So in the Mother Tree community, we look at plants as teachers and parts of consciousness on planet Earth that are helping us humans to evolve.
okay, yeah,
So plants have consciousness, trees have consciousness, and their level of consciousness is more evolved in a way than human consciousness. And before I started the Mother Tree community, because I told you the trees wanted to adopt me, or my true self, and in a coaching session said, Amanda, the trees want to adopt you. The kinds of messages that I got from the trees via journaling were very loving. Were not at all they just were not gripped by, what are you doing for the liberation of Black people?
work harder. Yeah,
Right. There was none of that coming. There was none of that,
yeah,
prove it. No, it was already like, wow, we love you. We love you.
wow.
Applause.
Oh wow. I need some trees to adopt me. That's so beautiful.
You do.
That is good. Yeah.
Around you. I mean, these
Yeah.
are, you if you open up to it, you probably do already have trees that have adopted you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about the trees right outside here right now. Also, just when you're talking about all the dimensions, it's like that's another just dimension of we're so cut off from nature by our culture or whatever. I don't even know what you want to call it. That we don't even remember that we are part of nature. Like we are nature. We are water and
fire,
yeah,
and air and earth. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Let me see what else I want to ask you. In your work with Mother Tree community, like what kinds of how are you gathering with people, or you mentioned the meditation that your son did, that was racial justice from the heart, but like talk to us about like what people could expect if they join Mother Tree community or
what do we do?
Yeah, what are y'all doing?
Well, one of the first things, so if you think of us like concentric circles, in the inner circle, there are those of us who are apprenticing ourselves to Earth and to our ancestors. And so in the tradition that I come out of, which is closely linked to Malidoma Some and the Dagar tradition, and to a Pachacuti cross-cultural Mesa tradition. In both of those, an apprenticeship is it's a careful watching. It's observing. It's learning from what the patterns that you see. So in apprenticing myself to Earth, I'm noticing the seasons. I'm noticing, what does it feel like in fall? What do I know is happening in fall? So in fall, we're releasing, right?
Yeah.
And winter, it's getting darker and colder, and the earth is slowing down, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the apprenticeship, we're apprenticing ourselves to learning and mimicking those cycles in our own lives and noticing which cycle we're in. So I think I might have said that I'm 58 on this call.
Yeah.
So you could say at 58, I'm like in the fall of my life. Or, super late summer, depending on how you want to look at it. So,
Yeah.
So what are we doing in the fall? We're harvesting, we're slowing down. It's still a time of activity, but it's not as much activity as it was when I was in my teens or in my 30s, when I had little young kids, and, I have adult children. So what we're doing in the Mother Tree community, I bring up the apprenticeship as the core, because that's where the learning is going on in the deepest, most intentional way. And then it radiates out. That next layer out is to people who do the soul journeys with us. So we do soul journeys for the winter solstice, spring equinox, summer solstice, and fall equinox, right? So those quarters.
Yeah.
And we take the essence of that season. So in the fall, the essence of release, the essence of winter is rest. Essence of spring is restoring. The essence of summer is like reaching out, getting out there. So we take the essence of each season in the soul journey and we work with them. We work with our ancestors. We work with plants to see what is it that we need to release. What is it that we need to lay down to rest? So to me, winter is a really good time for forgiveness work also. And my mentor, again, in the Dagar tradition, Jojapa Ansaruma, she says that forgiveness is letting go of the pain that was transferred onto you, and you letting go of the pain that you transferred on to others.
Okay. Yeah.
That's internal.
Yeah.
It's slow, and there's a lot of making space to allow your ancestors to assist you, to allow the earth to assist you, to relaxing your rational mind, and allow more of your soul to be forward. See all that stuff? So that is done in the descent. That is done undercover. That's not something that you're doing out on a street corner.
Yeah.
So you asked what the Mother Tree community does. So we have an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
We do soul journeys that anyone can join us with. And then we also do, we have monthly meetups. Like we're going to be getting together tomorrow to have a healing conversation about the election, to move some grief, fear, anger from our bodies, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm going to try to be at that.
I would love for you to be there
tomorrow.
I would love for you to be there.
Yeah. Would you share with us, so I saw that it was an ancestor who gave you the name Aminata Desert Rose Plant Walker Firewoman. And I have a couple questions, but one is, well, I guess the question is, would you want to share about that experience of receiving that name from that ancestor? And
I've decided not to share any more details about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I say something about that too?
Yeah.
The
Go
reason
ahead.
and why I want to say what I want to say about this is, in the U.S., I think, because I live here, so, and I look at social media and I look at our television. I mean, we have a culture where it's like, let it all out, you know?
Yeah.
And on some level, I think that it is, my own mother told me our secrets keep us sick, right?
Yeah, wow.
There's a
Yeah.
way in which the secrets can really be damaging. But again, if you look at Malidoma Some's work, a medicine keeper in the Dagara tradition, he talks about how important when you go through your initiation, some things are only yours. And when you share them with other people, they lose their power.
Wow. Yeah.
And I watched this when I shared the origin of my name with someone who couldn't hold it with reverence.
Yeah.
I watched what it was like. So I hold my name.
Thank you for explaining that. It makes sense to hear your explanation. I appreciate it. Yeah.
And that's observation. That's apprenticeship. See, apprenticeship is you observe what happens in your life, you know?
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, okay.
That's how that played out. Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, let me ask you something, a different question about something you had said on one of your YouTube podcasts about your ancestors. On your Juneteenth podcast episode, you shared a poem about the message that you said your ancestors were asking you to hear, and you said they were asking you to feel and to know, and that affected me so deeply. I guess, what do you feel your ancestors are asking you to feel and to know?
Yeah. That poem came in response to a prayer when I was working on a play. And the play was very smart, but it didn't really feel like it had a heart. It didn't really feel like it was revelatory. It felt like it was more like telling people stuff.
Yeah.
And for those who didn't see me, I just shook my neck, and it's like telling people stuff. And to me, the powerful art is art which invites vulnerability. So what the ancestors were saying to me in that poem was, remember me, forgive me, I forgive you. So that was the first three things they said: remember me, forgive me, I forgive you. And then they said feel. And when I was writing this play, I was a professor still, teaching at the college level. And my main character was an academic, was a docent at a museum at that time. And, she went through a transformation, but it was a mental transformation. It wasn't a soul kind of transformation, because she wasn't empathizing on a feeling level with the enslaved people in the play. So a lot of times in academics, we're taught to distance ourselves. Objectivity. The more objective you are, the more believable you are. The more emotional you are, the less believable you are. Your authority is linked to your mind, all that kind of stuff. So when they said feel, I think they were also inviting me into healing, because I one of the ways I got through the difficult things I got through in my life was to turn off, was to numb out and distract myself.
Yeah. it's so healing to hear you speak. I mean, really. What was I get? I had a related question. Did you always? I mean, you've talked a little bit about your journey with social justice and healing, and seeing the multidimensionality and plant medicine and ancestors. But I guess I'm wondering, did you always feel a connection to your ancestors, or was it did that come online for you more as you started to shift?
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I think because your question is interesting. I haven't been asked this question before. Because I would say I had my big spiritual awakening in 2021. I had a big, maybe, life pivot in 2008-ish, when I left academia. I got divorced. I spent a year at a Quaker retreat center. And that's where I started to really tap in, not just get the research on historical figures, but I remember I woke up in 2008-ish. I remember I woke up at like 4 a.m. I started writing a monologue from this Black woman who had been mentioned in John Woolman's spiritual autobiography, but she didn't have a name. And at that time, I was really interested in recovering Black people from the margins of these great works, and like really putting them in the center. And as opposed to building her from archival research, I woke up and just started channeling her story.
Wow.
And there was a couple of monologues came there while I was at that retreat center, where I was deepening spiritually and divesting myself of academic dominant academic standards or conventions. Yeah, that started opening up for me.
Yeah, it's so powerful to think of. It's like we hear the phrase like, what's the phrase, like when you're carrying something in your body from your ancestors? I can't think of what it's called.
Epigenetics?
Yeah, epigenetics, I guess, or like we hear the phrase ancestral trauma, or we hear these things, and it's so interesting to experience it, or consider experiencing it as like an embodied emotional. I'm not really sure where I'm going with this, but I had like my ancestors are the reason I started this podcast. Like I got like they started speaking to me really loudly last spring, and I had written about them with a lot of emotion, and I had felt connected to them, but there was like a moment when they were like, we need you to do more in terms of speaking up about, helping people heal and social justice stuff. And they were just like very specific. It was like they were like, do a podcast, and like I was like, okay. They're like very practical, and like it was incredible to feel connected to. Like I never felt like I fit anywhere, and then suddenly to be like, oh no, I fit with them. Like I belong with them. I am of them. I'm carrying something of them, and that's just in me. And so it doesn't matter that they're not here today physically. It's just like, that wasn't really a question. I guess I just was like, taking in what you were saying. And
I will say something different, Jess. So in 2008-ish, I was hearing from these people who were not biological ancestors of mine. But it really wasn't until more recently, I would say in the last couple of years, inside the Mother Tree community, that I started to create an ancestor practice. So I have an altar, and I have my objects on my altar, and I spend time with my altar, and I bought a drum back in the 90s, and I carried this drum around with me. It's from Ivory Coast. But I started to learn how to use that drum. It's a djembe, because I wanted to do ritual. And so part of how I connect with my ancestors is with this drum. So all that is I have to say that would be since I had my awakening in 2021. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm trying to think if I had... I feel like I have a million questions for you, and I also want to... I'm trying to keep these at a length that people will...
Perfect.
Listen, and then they can explore. Of course, put links to Mother Tree community and everything in the notes. But is there anything else that you want to talk about, or you want to share about right now with the folks listening?
I do. There's one other thing I'm exploring right now. So polarity versus duality, like holding a polarity rather than kind of getting stuck in duality. The other thing I'm playing with right now is justice without judgment. Oh. How can I be for justice without judgment? One of the things I think that's interesting, there's so many positive things that are sort of emerging right now-ish, but one of them is like restorative justice.
Yeah.
And that whole movement or idea is like not holding somebody, fixing somebody in one moment, for what they did at one moment or window in their lives, right? And having pathways for people to create restoration, right? It can restore, wholeness and community. So, but there's some people, when we talk about the other side, we don't have any of that give in our speaking, in our narration, know?
Yeah.
And because I'm really interested in liberation more than being right, or even more than being liked, I've done enough healing that now I'm really, I know that judgment keeps things locked in, and acceptance and compassion gives them space to move. But that doesn't mean that, and we can also have justice in the midst of that. We can also have correction.
Yeah.
So I just want to encourage people, especially those of us who have done some internal healing, or, have done some work with our own trauma, so we have more spaciousness to be with the hard stuff. I want to encourage us to think, how can we be for justice without judgment? How can we not judge a country or an individual, even though we think what they're doing is unjust? But how can we not judge them?
Yeah.
So that's something. I feel like this is something about being a mother tree, because mother trees are old. When they're in a forest, they're older trees. They've been out there for a minute.
Yeah.
And their canopies are very broad. They have a lot of diverse life that is
Yeah.
being sustained or nurtured by them, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they don't all agree. All the the life forces that are being sustained by them. They don't all agree with each other. They have different consciousnesses. And that mother tree is still a life-giving force.
Yeah.
So I feel like the mother tree community is for those of us who have an aspiration or who have a curiosity or willingness to do enough deep healing work so that we can hold the messiness that we're in.
Yeah. It's a phenomenal. I just have chills. Just like so. What you're speaking of feels so expansive and healing,
Yes.
and not just healing. Like, oh, I feel I don't know, better. It's like the possibility of it. Like that is that you're saying these things with your long background of racial justice work and your personal, like everything you've woven together, and that you have a view that can be so, I don't know, my words aren't really saying what I'm trying to say. I'm really grateful that you shared that idea.
I appreciate you. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you letting me know how you feel. I appreciate you being in touch with your body and be able to say, it's on the back of your neck. It's, I appreciate you being embodied and not disembodied, because that's where we get in trouble.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. I think that you're really brilliant, and I'm really, really grateful to have you and your wisdom here. And
thank you.
Yeah.
When you are tempted to walk away from their reverie, you might hear them say, "Kid, we are here. There's no reason to fear. Won't you join us as often as you are able?"
Jess Klein's Big Table is produced by me, Jess Klein, and recorded on the traditional lands of the Lumbee, Chiraw, Catawba, Saponi, Occaneechi, Eno, and Shakori people. If you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you did, please subscribe, please like, and please share it with your people. You can find out more about my upcoming tour dates and musical releases at jessklein.com or on my Substack. Talk to you soon.